Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eduardo Novoa. This is today we are doing the careers in IT support, networking, and cybersecurity. Next slide, please. So again, this is part two of a three-part series. Last week we did the general overview. So for those of you who joined us last week, some of the stuff, especially when we talk about the functions and some of the job descriptions, are going to be a little repetition from last week. Otherwise, we have a lot of new stuff. So today, again, we're going to be talking about careers in support, networking, and cybersecurity. We're going to be doing a deeper dive into those three areas. And then next week, next Thursday, we are going to talk about careers in data, cloud, and web and app development. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the objective for today, again, is we're going to explore the career paths in those three areas. And then we're going to also discuss the skills, the training, and the specific certifications for these areas, um, salaries, and job outlook for these careers. And just like last week, we are going to talk about some other helpful resources. Next slide, please. So again, once again, for those of you who joined us last week, this is going to be a repetition, but for those of you who are joining us today for the first time, again, my name is Eduardo Novoa. I am currently the Technical Training and Development Coordinator here at the Ignite Hub. I have over 2 decades of experience in the IT industry, and I've done a little bit of everything in those 20 years. I started building and repairing computers, and I've done support. I did support for a while. Then I've done some system administration, cybersecurity, and now I have pivoted a little bit towards the instruction side. Um, I do have a bachelor's degree in technical management with a concentration in business information systems and a master's degree in cybersecurity, and I currently hold the CISSP certification. We are going to be talking today specifically about this certification and other certifications in cybersecurity. Um, just a couple of fun facts about me. I'm an avid reader. I like to read a little bit of everything, fiction, nonfiction, historical, anything really. And I'm a huge fan of Star Trek series and movies. So that's me. Thank you so much. All right, next slide, please. So let's start by, again, talking a little bit about the career paths in IT support. And next slide, we are going to, again, talk a little bit just to remind us from last week, what are the common functions in this particular area? So we talked about that support is usually considered the entry way for a lot of people into IT. Um, and within IT support, the most common entry-level job, it's considered the help desk specialist. We're going to see that on the next slide, but right now, we just, and I'm bringing all this up because this is crucial, the first function that we see here, especially in this area, in all areas, honestly, in IT, but especially in this one. Listen to customer descriptions of issues. So like I said last week, if you have ever had the need to call the help desk because you were locked out, you needed a password reset, or you were having some issue with something, you have talked to somebody in support. And as you know, you always try to, first of all, explain the problem to the other person on the phone. So this is, on the surface, it may look like something that is quite easy, but in reality, it's not. It's a skill set that it takes a couple of different things that we're going to talk in a second. But don't fret. I mean, that is something that you get better as you do it, okay? And you get better with time, definitely. So again, you need to really listen to what the customer is saying. Do not assume that you know what's happening. Yes, a lot of problems have similar, symptoms, but you need to really listen. The other part that is super important and where the skill comes from for this particular one is because you need to be able to hear what the customer is saying, probably in non-technical language, in plain language, sometimes even in the wrong language to describe a problem, but you need to try to understand and ask the correct questions. Okay, so just to start right there, it's kind of a little difficult, not impossible, and again, you get better with time. But as you listen to those description of issues that the customer may have, um, at the same time, you need to sometimes be diagnosing the computer problem because the customer may be describing to you an issue with their computer, with an application, or with something that is happening, or maybe they need help with a particular thing. It may not be a problem. It may be that they're just calling you and say, "Hey, how do I format this document, this Word document, or how do I put formulas on an Excel document?" Something like that. So diagnosing computer problems is also called troubleshooting, which is the next one. And that is super important. It does, these skills that you're seeing here are foundational for a reason. Every single aspect of IT is going to use these three things, okay? The troubleshooting, listening to customers' descriptions of issues, of wants or needs, and being able to diagnose what's happening here, okay? So again, that's kind of like the troubleshooting, but troubleshooting, it's at the same time that you are intaking that information, you're already in your brain processing how you can possibly solve this issue or possible solutions to this issue. Sometimes you are right the first time. Sometimes it takes two or three tries, especially if it's a problem that you never encountered before. So it's quite common. Okay. The main thing here is like when talking to clients is to be very honest with them. Never, for any reason, it's okay to say I don't know. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's okay to say I don't know. It's okay to say let me find out. It's okay to say I'll come back to you, but don't ever lie to a client just to save face if you don't know. So so again, then the other piece that usually the careers in this area do is set up, repair computer workstations. Again, if you have ever in your job, in your school, if you've been given a laptop or device, a Chromebook, whatever it is, or you needed to get it repaired, you have talked to somebody in support. Um, Again, maybe if in your work you are assigned a device, maybe they needed to, it was too old, so they replaced it, or maybe they needed to install a new application, you have talked to somebody in support, okay? Which is the next one, which is install and configure hardware and software. You have gotten a printer delivered, diagnosed, and you have talked to somebody in support. Let's go to the next slide. And let's talk a little bit about some of the job titles that are covered on this area, right? So we talked about the help desk specialist. Again, that is considered in the industry as the entry level job in IT. Now, does everybody that is aspiring a job in IT needs to start the help desk? No, I never did help desk. Um, Again, I started doing more of the field service technician, if you wish, by building and repairing computers. That was my first real job in IT. But these are considered what is called tier one support, okay? So in support, there are three tiers, tier one, tier two, and tier three. And we're gonna explain a little bit about which each one does. We have done a couple of different job titles for tier one, because again, those are the entry level, and you may be very familiar with them. But what happens if the help desk specialist cannot solve your problem, right? Either because maybe, again, they are trying to solve the issue over the phone, so they're not in front of the computer, they don't have physical access to the device or to whatever it is in your office that you need help with. So that could be one reason. The other could be that it's beyond, what they can do. That's okay. Again, that's what it's called tier one support. Tier one, it's most problems can be really and are solved within a tier one because most problems are simple, really. The solutions are not that complicated. But for whatever reason, either because the technician is not able to physically access the stuff or they couldn't resolve your issue, then they need to create a ticket and put it to a tier two support specialist. This was my first job in IT. And this is the people that are on site. This is the people that come to your office and say, hey, I'm here to solve your issue because, your computer is not displaying properly or whatever it is. So these are the people that, again, A, because they are on site, or B, because they have a little bit more knowledge about troubleshooting. So that's usually what they are. They also, tend to be the people who set up the equipment in offices, in labs, in classrooms, that kind of stuff. So now, a tier three, again, it's the difference between a tier two and a tier three is because the tier three may or may not be on site. This is the people that do the system administration. So I've done tier two and tier three support. This is people that usually can remotely manage not one computer like the help desk technicians do, but just a series of computers. They can probably push a particular application to hundreds of computers at the same time, or maybe they can push one to one particular station. So usually these people have access to more of an enterprise. That's how they cover the whole enterprise. A tier two usually covers anywhere to 100, 200 clients, and help desk is usually one-on-one, as you can see. So again, this is a big area, believe it or not. The big area, and then yeah, while somebody just starting as a help desk specialist may start at the bottom wrong when it comes to salary, which we're gonna see in a second. um, there's a tier three technician can make some decent money, and actually, honestly, all of these tiers require management, which is again where the real the good salaries are as well. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And we're talking about salaries here. So let me first of all explain what that means, what this graphic means. And before I even start there, I want to say that anybody that registered, regardless if they attended in person or online, or maybe couldn't attend today, they're going to receive a copy of this presentation. Okay, and the copy of that presentation, as you can see at the bottom of that frame, you can see it says Source SIP Recruiter. Those are live links. So when you get this presentation, if you want to find out more about this, you click on that link, and then you can actually see a little bit more about this explanation. So let's go back. First of all, as you can see, this is a snapshot for yearly, and this for an IT support specialist, okay? So IT support specialist, I'm going to say it's probably maybe a tier two in some cases, a tier one in some cases. This is not a tier three, okay? Now let's talk about that number. So it's close to $70,000 per year, but let me explain to you what that means. Also, you see on the lower end, you see 34,000, and in the higher end, you see 110,000 plus. All right. So what this means is that this is the average for anybody that holds that title. Again, and it could be a tier one, it could be a tier two, it can even be maybe a tier three technician. Okay. So, and it could be anywhere in the country. So it could be in somewhere like Kalamazoo, Michigan, or it could be again. So is a median. It's an average between what a person in a lower cost of living area versus a higher cost living area, like ours. Ours is one of the highest cost of living areas in the United States. So when you see that number, $70,000, actually, I will add 15 to 20% to that. So that $34,000 probably represents somebody that is coming to do a help desk job, again, in a lower cost of living area. Here, I don't think that nobody's going to start below like 40 something. And that's for the very entry level, minimum experience, minimum qualifications. Okay. Again, I think that people can go over that $110,000 here in this area for tier three specialists, especially with, you know, um, some 10 plus years of experience, the correct qualifications, etc. But that $70,000, I think that it's a good representation of what a tier two, again, in this area, I will put that probably more like $80,000 a year um, that a tier two technician will make. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so let's look at the job outlook for this particular um, position, which is the IT support specialist, okay? And again, it could be anywhere from tier one to tier three, okay? So the projected growth for this particular title is 10% in the from 2018 to 2028. Okay, it's not bad. Remember that this is actually IT. You're going to see that there's growth in all of these jobs. There's no stagnation in any of these jobs. And as we go next week, it's going to be eye popping. Actually, today when we go to cybersecurity, you're going to see that the expected growth jobs is really high. As we discussed last week, the biggest job growth in IT right now, it's going to be in cybersecurity, it's going to be in data, it's going to be in cloud, and right now also AI is starting to creep up because all these positions are starting to appear, and there's not many people qualified to do these things. All right. So again, there's right now about 80,000 plus jobs available right now, or are projected, I'm sorry, over the next decade. There are over 110,000 active computer support specialist jobs openings in the US. That's for the whole US. That's a ton of jobs, right? So, of course, some areas will have more than others, but again, there's growth, there's opportunity in this area. And again, once again, this area is considered the entry level point for mostly for IT. Okay, again, you don't have to. There's people that start in cloud. There's people that start straight into network engineering. There's people that start straight into web development. The one that I'm going to say that is very difficult to start straight into is going to be cyber, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's not impossible, by the way. So, but and you're going to understand when we talk about cyber jobs why. So let's see the next slide, please. Okay, so for those of you who attended last week, again, this is going to be a repetition. For those of you joining us today for the first time, we're going to talk about skills. And then we have divided those skills into hard skills or technical skills and soft skills, okay? So when we say this list, again, is now a little bit more specific to this area. And it's not first of all, it's not all inclusive. So not everything that you see here will apply to every single position. And some positions will require more than what you see here, okay? But in general, again, we talk about that troubleshooting. That troubleshooting is super, super important. Being able to figure out what the problem is, and not only what the problem is, but what the solution is, okay? So troubleshooting is not just, okay, I know what is wrong here, but it's also, this is how I'm gonna fix it, or this is how I propose to fix it, okay? Again, the solution may be the first one that you try, and that's great, but you may have to try two or three different approaches. That's all. And again, you get better as you do it more and more. When I say hardware, I mean knowledge of hardware. And again, it could be foundational for somebody just starting, like IT help desk specialist. It may be foundational. You just need to understand the different types of hardware. You don't need to have to know a lot. But as you go up on those tiers, you really need to, your knowledge needs to be a little bit deeper, okay? And that goes for everything, by the way. So operating systems, again, knowledge of Windows is a must. And I will have to say, um, uh, right now, I think that most computers, first of all, let's talk about why Windows is bolded there. Windows is still by far the most used operating system in the world. So about 90 plus 90% or more of computers in the world run Windows, a version of Windows. And versions of Windows that are still out there, I don't know if people still have Windows 7. I'm pretty sure that there are some out there, but mostly what you're going to see is Windows 10 and Windows 11, right? So knowing the last two or three Windows operating systems, be familiar with them, okay? Again, it could be basic to deep to power user. Mac OS, again, if it's this does not apply to every single job place, but Mac OS is really used in some industries. Education is one of them. The other one is basically graphic design, anything that has to do with creativity, music, stuff like that. And now these days, it's those mobile operating systems, iOS, Android, and I put Linux. We talked about this last week. Why is Linux important? What is even Linux for some of you may ask? So Linux is a series of distributions. There are actually literally dozens of Linux distributions. What makes a Linux operating system Linux? So Linux is basically kind of like it's a remote cousin. Is like is a second cousin to iOS. To I'm sorry, to Mac OS. Mac OS and Linux are the grandkids of something called Unix. Okay, so what makes Linux? Uh, it's that first of all, Linux is called Linux because it was developed by a gentleman named Linus Torvald. I believe he is one of those Nordic countries. I don't know exactly which one. Anyways, about 30 years ago, he was just trying to create a very light and very useful, I'm sorry, user-friendly operating system. So he created the core of Linux, and that's why it's called Linux, because it's a combination of his name, Linus, and Unix, Linux. So uh, every Linux distribution at its core has the Linux kernel. And then on top of that, you have a shell. And that's why there's so many different distributions, but they are all very similar. Why is Linux important? Linux is important because a lot of these things, a lot of servers, a lot of things that, especially for networking, for cyber, run on Linux. Some of the Linux distributions like Red Hat, Fedora, um, SUSE, another popular distribution is Ubuntu. So there's tons. There's Mint. There's really literally dozens of distributions. They're all very similar, but they're important. So how do you learn Linux if you have no exposure to Linux whatsoever? Uh, I never took a Linux class. What I did is I downloaded a free virtual machine player, and all these distributions of Linux are free, by the way, most of them. Um, so start playing with them. That's what I did. Office software. Okay. Again, this is productivity software. Again, Microsoft here being the main player. We are all familiar with the Office suite or Office 365 now. So we're talking about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access to a degree. So, but now also a lot of people are using Google Docs. Again, it's just productivity software. Still, knowledge of Microsoft Office is super important. Again, it could be anywhere from just basic knowledge to very advanced knowledge. Again, the example that I gave a couple of minutes ago, somebody calling and saying, hey, I need help with this Excel spreadsheet. I'm trying to do XYZ. How do I do that? So, um, but yeah, especially Word and Excel are two applications that are used very much anywhere corporate. So that's why. Uh, the next one, it's foundational or fundamentals of networks and security. Why I say this? Again, you don't need to have deep knowledge to start a career, especially in support, but you need to understand how a computer network works and how to secure it, or at least at the very high level concepts of security. Why is it important for you to know how a network works? Because when you're trying to troubleshoot or diagnose a problem, the problem may not be with the endpoint. The problem may not be with the computer. The problem may not be with the hardware or the operating system or the application. The problem may be with the network. So you need to understand how they work to figure out where the problem is. If you need to isolate that, because you may or may not be able to resolve it. The problems with the network, let's say that you're a tier two technician, you go, you figure it says, okay, it's not a computer, is not basically it's not the hardware, it's not the operating system. There's nothing wrong with Windows or Mac, whatever. It's not the application. So the problem is with the network. So you will need to elevate that or transfer that ticket to like the network engineers, which we're going to talk next. And again, those concepts of security are important. Right now, I think I mentioned this last week. 20 years ago, people used to build applications, systems, networks first, and then think about securing them later. That's no longer the case. Now, whenever you're building, designing, planning any of these things, you need to start with security concepts in mind. So security goes from the very beginning, from the planning stage now. You don't build something and then think about, now how am I going to make it secure? No, 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 no. you start building something secure from the get-go. So that's why having at least concepts of security are important. And other software. This is a very general and very wide area. It could be some specific software that the company uses and they would like to you to have that knowledge if possible. Sometimes that's usually when they go to preferred. When you see a job posting, you're going to have minimum qualifications and then you have preferred. Okay. So preferred, there are bonuses. Okay. If you haven't, great. But you need to at least very meet the minimum qualifications. Let's go to the next one. Okay, baseline soft skills. And remember this slide because you're going to see this slide 3 times today. This exact same slide is for all areas. As a matter of fact, if you join us next week, you're going to see it 3 times again because those soft skills are universal for anything. And it's not only for IT. Honestly, these skills are very necessary for any career these days. But in IT, especially, and I'm going to talk about that, the fourth one, the third one, and the fourth one are quite important. So let's go one by one. Communication, again, is that ability to, communicate verbally and orally and written, via emails, being able to type documents, that kind of stuff. Again, I think that misconception that people in IT never get to talk to people, that is incorrect. Maybe that was the case 20 years ago, but now no. Business IT is now, like we said last week, IT is now a business function. It's not a separate department. Everything runs on IT. So you are going to talk to people. If they're not clients, they're going to be colleagues, they're going to be people from other departments, they're going to be your superiors, there could be people outside the organization. So they could be you're going to need to talk to people. So that communication is super, super important. Okay. Again, it's not about speaking without an accent. Everybody has an accent. I have an accent. We all do. It's about being able to communicate properly, write properly, and being able to get your ideas across. And in communication, it's not just what you say, but it's the ability to also listen, like we said. Organization, that is kind of self-explanatory, but quite important in IT. Why? Especially with support, you may get 3, 4 things at the same time. Boom, 10 things or 5, 3, 4 things. You need to figure out which one is the most important. Which one do I need to take care of first? What I can do for later? What is the order? When I need to come back? So that's those organization skills because you cannot do everything all at once, right? Now let's talk about analysis. I said that's quite important, specifically in IT, because again, you cannot do troubleshooting and without being having the capacity to analyze things. When you see a problem, an analysis at its basic, at its core, what it means to create analysis is to break a big problem into smaller chunks. Okay, that's what it is. So you need to do that in order to troubleshoot, in order to work on projects. So super important. The next one is quite important. I mentioned this last week. I'm going to repeat it again. If you are thinking about getting in a career in IT, this is not a career that you go and study for 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, and then you call it a day and then you're good for the rest of your life. No, you will need to constantly learn. Okay, this is if you are not the type of person that loves lifelong learning, that this may not be a career for you. You'll always constantly need to learn new skills, new technologies, etc., etc. And how you do that? By going to school? Yes, that's one way. But I can tell you right now, of everything that I know, and I don't know everything, by the way. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and there's a ton of things that I don't know. If there's one thing in IT, is that there's a lot of things to know. Do you need to know all of them at once? No, obviously not. Um, but do you need to learn it as you progress? Absolutely. And you need to be able to learn them by yourself. You need to be able to do that research because, like I mentioned, of everything that I've learned, probably 60% I learned in school. The rest I learned on my own. Okay. By, again, just like I told you how I learned Linux, by poking at things, by just playing with them, by doing the research, by learning, and again through books, but also through Google, YouTube, anything. But you just need to understand what is the value and what, how much. Um, Even Wikipedia, if you're just trying to find the gist of something, Wikipedia is a good thing. You can Google things. It's like when you're trying to write a paper, then Wikipedia is not going to pass muster. All right. But if you're just trying to really quickly understand what something is, Wikipedia is a good tool. So you just need to be able to understand your sources and where is your go-to when you're trying to just find something. Is it just I want to start the knowledge and then you want to go deeper? No, how that works. Last one, very important, interpersonal. Sorry, that's again, that is the nonverbal communication. But the capacity, the capability of being able to have a good relationship with other people. And what I mean is a professional relationship. I don't mean being smiling to everyone. I don't mean being nicer. I just mean being capable of being professional in a professional environment. Okay. So you don't have to be the nicest person, but you need to be a professional. Okay. And a lot of those skills are nonverbal. And I can go on what that means. It means anything from knowing how to dress, how to act, what to say in a particular environment. But that's what we mean by that. So let's go to the next slide. All right, let's take a moment here. And again, if anybody wants to share, you are welcome. Otherwise, let's take these and this for personal reflection. Okay. Out of what was covered in this section, what stood out for you? Was it the salary? Was it the fact that there's a ton of jobs in support? Was it the fact that you didn't know that support was even an option for you? And are you interested in a career in IT support? Okay, again, if anybody wants to share, by all means, please do. By the way, for our friends online, if you have any questions or comments, please post them on the chat. My colleague Anthony will relay them to me. All right, thank you so much. So if there's no questions, let's move on. Next slide, please. All right. So let's talk about networking career paths. All right. Again, if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the common functions again. Again, for the people who joined us last week, maybe a little bit of a refresher. But let's start with, all right, let me start with the second one. Ensure network is functional and secure. Okay. So this is the primordial function for the people that work in the networking. But there's other functions, other than just make sure that the network is functional and secure. So what does that mean? It means that for most of you, you have never seen a network engineer. Maybe, like I said last week, maybe you've seen like a network closet. Maybe the door was open, you were walking around, and you've seen these racks of equipment with all these lights, looks like a Christmas tree, and then some guy or people there or lady just working on them. That's a network engineer. You most likely have not talked to a network engineer because their job is to be invisible, in the sense that if they're doing their job properly, you'll never get to see them. You just, the network just works. Okay? You're trying to go to Google, you type google.com, boom, it goes. You do a search, it comes back. You don't give another thought about how that happened. The 15, 20 steps that happen between you hitting enter and that coming back. But the people that does the network does that and make sure that all of that happens seamlessly and smoothly. Okay. Without them, there will be no IT. Everything runs on the network. Okay. Either the wire or wireless. Without the network, computers, phones, tablets, all endpoints are nothing but expensive paperweights. It is the network that allows that communication and for them to be useful. Okay. So let's go to optimize network performance, which kind of goes hand in hand with ensure network is functional. So now, okay, everything is working fine, but we need to make sure that this thing is efficient. Um, I often ask this question. It says that does anybody here or online know what the 5 nines are? Anybody? No? So 5 nines means 99.999% of the time. That is the minimum. That is the benchmark. Any network gotta be running, it's gotta be up 99.999% of the time. That is considered satisfactory. What that means? That means that the network can only be down for 5 minutes a year, including nights and weekends. Right? So that's an efficient network. Networks in the government run on 7 nines, 11 nines. That means less than a minute per, less than a second per year, actually, if you go to the 11 nines. So making sure that not only the network is up all the time, but optimize the performance. Okay. What good is a network if it's super slow? If you click, if you enter google.com, hit enter, and it takes 2 minutes for you for that page to load up. By the way, that's how it used to be back in the day with dial-up. There's anybody here that is about my age, you will remember that. I hope those days never come back. But yes, that's how long it took before. Now you expect to hit enter and that to come back instantly, even before you blink, right? Well, that's because the network has been optimized by your network people. Now, let's go to the center one, ensure secure transfer of data. Like I said last week, this is where things start bleeding or interconnecting with each other. This is cybersecurity in reality. Depending on the size of the company, okay, they may or may not have a separate security group, okay? For example, an organization like Montgomery College does. We do. We have a team of about 5, 7 people. I was honored to be a part of them for a little while. But other companies, smaller companies, maybe the cybersecurity is one of the network engineers. Maybe there's, that's the people that ensure the secure transfer of data. Okay. So this is another reason why I made that comment about cyber. A lot of people that are right now in cyber have come from networking because, again, you need to understand how to secure the network. The network is one, but it's still one of the most attacked parts of a system. Even though these days probably the applications is the higher, you have the higher number of attacks. But anyways, so that now let's go look at the other two functions. Okay, let's look at the first one. So these are your system engineers. Okay, support internal servers and network devices. So your network is comprised of a lot of different pieces of equipment. Okay, and it could be they could be also separated geographically, or they could be consigned to one building, to one floor. It depends on how big that network is. You all have a network in your homes. Okay. If you have a internet access, you have a network because that little gateway, that router that either you rent or you bought from the that is what is connected to your device to the network. That is a network. Okay, so you have several devices connected to that network, right? Just that little gateway is your access and ingress and access point to the rest of the world. Likewise here, all right? So some of you may even have servers in your network, right? Like music servers or something like that. But yeah, so that way also, on corporate networks, there's a ton of servers, okay? And there's different types of servers, file servers, there's application servers, there are web servers, okay. So the people who manage those things, those are your system engineers, okay, which is kind of like part of these as well. Sometimes there are also some of them classified as support, but I will classify more in the networking piece. So support those internal servers and network devices, all right? And those network devices also cover what I said. If you look at those network closets, all those devices that you see in that rack are most likely switches and probably firewalls and routers, maybe. So it's supporting all that. And when I say support, it means install, repair, configure, patch, update, replace, repair, etc. Last one, backup network data. Okay, again, a function of mostly like your system administrators and your system engineers. But like I said last week, your data is as good as the last backup. Okay, so if for whatever disaster, it could be a cyber attack, it could be a tornado, it could be whatever happens to that data is only as good as the last backup. If the last backup is a year old, that's how good your data is. Okay. So very important things. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So here, the job that we're going to be exploring a little bit more here is the network engineer. Okay. But as you see, so the network, what does a network engineer do? So the network engineer, again, is the person who, first of all, is in charge of those networking devices. So they need to configure those devices, deploy them, patch them, replace them when necessary. Sometimes they need to, when they need to expand the network. Um, uh, also, they need to monitor the network. Okay, that's part of what they do. Um, so you have network administrator, network support technician, who is possibly the entry level job in this area. A network support technician is probably somebody that has to deal mostly probably with the wall jacks and the patches and the cables, that the network cables that go from there to the patch panels on the network closets, maybe patching from the patch panel to the switch, etc. Good way to start there. But the network engineer is the premier or the most marquee job in this area. Then again, you have your system administrators, your SAs, and your SEs that I talked about when we were talking about the servers and the backups and all that stuff. Okay. All right. Let's go to salaries. Next slide, please. All right. So now we know how to read this graphic. Again, look at the very, and I think that 31,000 is low, but again, it could be somebody that is just laying down network cables and is considered a network technician, all right? And then look at that 158,000. Okay, so that's, again, that could be a network administrator, a network architect, okay? But look at $109,000 for a network engineer. I will say that is correct in this area. About 100,000, 110 per year for a network engineer with a couple of years of experience and a couple of certifications. That is doable. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, let's see. So 5%, not bad. At least it's not in the negative. Okay. Why is that? Because these jobs, um, usually they do see growth, but mostly is when some people retire or they move on from being a network engineer to being somewhere else in IT. That's quite common. Usually network engineers move, the next step from network engineer is probably going to cyber or to be a network architect, a network administrator, something to that effect. But still, the 5% growth, okay, about 20,000 new jobs in the next 10 years. Okay, and currently 70,000 plus active network engineer job openings in the US. So good paying job, good. That's something that I did a little bit of this and I understand a lot of this, but honestly, if I have to do it all over again, probably this is I will definitely try to get into networking. Next slide, please. So let's look at those hardline skills. And as you can see, they become a little bit more specific. Again, troubleshooting universal, Windows and Linux operating systems. I already explained why Linux. Linux is used a lot in servers. And by the way, also the operating systems, because those switches, those routers actually have operating systems on them. Just like the computers, And most of these operating systems are proprietary. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You're going to see why when we talk about certifications, but they are mostly, if not all of them, based on Linux. Basically, they are proprietary Linux distributions. That's all they are, okay? So all these devices running Linux. Then you see now the importance of Linux, because if you know Linux, and Linux, the other part about Linux is that for Linux power users, while Linux has a GUI or a graphic user interface, just like Windows or Mac OS does, and you can do everything in the GUI, the real power of Linux is when you launch the terminal or the console, the command or the bash. So Linux bash commands are universal. So it doesn't matter what distribution you're working on, the only difference is the shell. But if you're using bash, and by the way, you can use Linux without the shell, just with bash. And that's exactly how the operating systems on those network devices will be. They will not have a GUI. You will have to access them through, you will have a GUI in the laptop that you will be connecting to, but all of those commands, you will have to do it through terminal, through bash. So that is why it's important to know Linux. So again, knowing that difference, networking, hardware, and appliances. What is the difference between a switch, a bridge, um, a router, or a layer 3 switch, and a firewall? So a hardware firewall. We're not talking about software firewalls here, okay? So that's that. And then what I just mentioned, there's network operating and monitoring systems. So this is also tools, the knowledge of specific tools. For monitoring networks, there are a ton of different tools out there. One of the most popular ones is something called SolarWinds. Actually, that name became kind of like familiar to a lot of people. About a year back, there was a specific attack on SolarWinds. SolarWinds is a monitoring is a tool for monitoring networks, vendor specific software. So again, it depends. Let's say that there's different network equipment vendors, Cisco being the one of the ones with the biggest pie, but there's other ones as well. So, and then they have vendor specific software because of that. And again, those fundamentals of security. All right. So fundamentals at least, deep knowledge of security preferred. All right, let's talk about those. Next slide. And yep, again, same exact thing, right? Same things apply. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so out of what was covered in this section, again, if anybody wants to share, welcome to do so. Otherwise, for your personal reflection, what stood out for you? What stood out in this section? I don't know. It could be like, wow, I didn't know the networks engineer makes that much money. I was like, okay, that maybe sound interesting. And again, are you interested in a career in computer networks? All right. Questions, comments? No? If not, we'll move on. We good? Oh, yeah, please. What is the question? Okay. Thank you, sir. Anthony's trying to get out. Looks like somebody asked a question online. No. Go ahead. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. I have a question. IT career path with more certification, IT supporting specialist, and how? Okay. So we're going to be talking about that in a minute, Birok. We're going to be talking about the certifications for all these three areas. After we discuss each one of these three areas, then we're going to talk about the certifications for each one of them. Okay. Now, which one will take the least amount of time? So again, if we are just discussing, just trying to get into the industry, if you're just trying to get into IT, you're completely new. Usually, again, a lot of people try to start by doing the help desk support. And to do help desk support, uh, you're probably going to need just a little bit of experience or just to prove that you are at least have done a little bit of support, even if it's not paid, and maybe have something like an A plus certification. We're going to talk about what the A plus certification is. So again, you can get that knowledge and that experience, I would say, in about 6 months to a year. Um, and then it's feasible, not guaranteed, that you will be able to get a job as a help desk support specialist. Uh, but yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about certifications in a minute, specific to each one of these areas. All right, next slide, please. All right, you know what? Let's just go ahead and continue. So let's go to the next slide. All right, let's talk about cyber. Near and dear to my heart. I can be here talking to you guys for hours about this, but we're going to keep things on track. So I'm going to try to control. All right, cyber. Let's go to the next slide. Again, let's talk about the common functions. So before we even go there, I mentioned, and again, I don't want to discourage anybody. I just said that it will be a little difficult, not impossible, okay, to get straight into cyber. And I'm going to try to condensate this in the following statement. You cannot be a good defender if you don't know what you're defending. Cyber security means that you are trying to secure your endpoints, meaning your computers, right? Your phones, your tablets, your laptops, anything that connects wirelessly to the network, okay? Any device that connects to your network. Nowadays, also remember that you have all these smart devices, fridges, and cameras, and uh, thermostats, and all kinds of stuff that connect to the network. So every single one of these things need to be protected, right? On top of that, you need to protect the network from which all these communications traverse. You need to protect the data. That is the important part here. Okay, at the end of the day, the most valuable thing that any company has is the data. Yes, computers, um, hardware, all that costs money and is an investment. You know, all that. But the most valuable thing is the data. Okay. So you need to protect that data. And that's what you're really trying to protect, honestly. You're not trying to protect the computer monitor. That's just, it's hardware. But you're trying to protect the data. So with that said, that's why it's difficult to get straight into cyber, because if you look at most job postings, it's going to be asking you for a lot of experience, years, 3, 5, 10, plus other things. So again, not impossible. What I always recommend for anything that is related to IT, because that is the conundrum. I've heard this so many times. People trying to get into IT, they go and they get a certification or they get a degree, they get a certificate, and they go like, okay, now I'm ready to get a job, and then they start applying, and they go like, I have now the knowledge, but I don't have the experience. And they want experience, they want a degree, they want a certification. It's like, oh my gosh, how can I get all those? So the answer to that is you need to work in parallel. All right. You cannot concentrate just in getting the knowledge. You need to start trying to build a portfolio and experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. No, we talked last week. I don't think that we talk about that in this presentation. But basically, you need to start, depending on what you're trying to do, volunteer work is important, okay? Internships are huge. And again, I know that they're not easy to get, but they're paid and unpaid internships. That is the easiest way. Also, with internships, um, it is there's the possibility that you can get they can be conduct to a job. All right. So that's another way that you can get experience. Okay. And again, volunteer experience, paid or unpaid, it's important. Um, all right. So you know what, guys? I'm going to Um, all right, so let's start talking about these common functions then. All right, so conduct conduct vulnerability assessments. That is important because at the end of the day, that's what cybersecurity professionals try to do. All right. As you know, when you have heard the expression, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Again, that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to find that weak link. What is that weak link? Is that weak link the hardware, software? Maybe it's an application, maybe something in the network. So what is it? So you're constantly trying to look like, where are my vulnerabilities? Okay. And then you need to detect cyber threats. Okay. Now that I know where I can potentially be attacked, it's like, you need to constantly be monitoring. Okay. What is the traffic on my network? What is going on? Let me see what's happening. You need to monitor logins and all that kind of stuff to see if there's anything suspicious, okay? And that, when you think about cybersecurity, that's probably the first thing that comes to your mind, right? Two things come to mind. First of all, the attacker, the hacker, with a hoodie, just hunch over a computer. And in the other side, the defender in the war-like room, which, by the way, those most companies don't have. So just if you're trying to get into cyber, just to be in a war room, uh, most companies don't have those. The network operating centers have those, but yeah, most companies do not have those. But you do have people that is constantly monitoring the network. That is correct. Yes. Um, so you need to start monitoring and trying to monitor the network traffic, which is number four, and trying to, as you monitor, trying to detect those cyber threats. Okay. Then you need to evaluate your security controls. What are security controls? Security controls is anything that you use um, to secure that data or those assets. And it could be something as the lock in the door or a padlock, you know, uh, or a badge that you need to have a badge and a specific access to your network closets. Okay. So that is, and again, it could also be policy. It could also be some software controls. It could be different things. Okay. So the next one, which is investigate, like I mentioned last week, for the people who work in cybersecurity, is never, or people who work in cybersecurity should know that is not if I get attacked, because you will get attacked. Is when I get attacked, how bad the attack will be and how long it will take to recover. All right. So that is the first part of after an attack happens. Investigate what happened here. How long have they been here? Are they out now? Are they still here? What's happening? So you need to investigate that security breach. And then you need to mitigate it. Instead, okay, we need to stop it, and then you need to recover from it. Okay. So that is a whole process. And then advise the staff and management on safe practices. And I'm going to separate those two because, again, I mentioned this last week. A lot of people think that, cyber security personnel is always trying to fight the attackers. And yes, that is correct. But believe it or not, the attacker is not the biggest threat to your company. The biggest threat to your company are your employees, because the attacker are going to convince them to give them their credentials. So you need to advise, you need to educate your staff in how to be vigilant, in how to prevent cyber attacks. As of last year, the majority, and when I say the majority, I'm talking about 90% of attacks still happen because of social engineering, meaning that somebody convinced somebody to click on a link or to give out their credentials. That's how they got in. They didn't really hack their way in. They convinced somebody to give them credentials to get in, and then they started borrowing from there. And it's also, depending on the position that you hold, is advising management on what are the controls that you're recommending. Somebody can say, okay, so you can come to management and say, okay, I have found this huge hole in our security. And they're going to say, okay, good job. And the very next question that they're going to have for you is, so how do we patch it? How much is going to cost me? What are you proposing? So again, this is something that is not specific to IT. Remember this advice, never go to your boss with just a problem. Ever, 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 ever. Don't ever go to your boss with a problem. Go with your boss with a problem and a proposed solution. Okay? So that is the way to go. So here is the same thing. Oh, I found this thing. Okay, great. How do I fix it? How much is it going to cost me? Oh, it's going to cost you $500,000. What? Why do I need to spend $500,000? What if I don't spend $500,000? You need to have answers to all those questions. And that goes back to the soft skills. You need to talk to sometimes to your boss, maybe even to the CEO of the company. Not that these people is dumb or they don't understand technology. They are very smart, but you need to talk to their language. And to a CEO, the language that they understand is like, what is the potential for this to, what if I don't do this? How much will this cost me? They always are looking, okay, if I don't invest $100,000, this could cost me $1 million, then yes, I am going to invest. But you need to make that case. Does that make sense? All right, let's go to the next slide, please. And again, it's a longer list. Why? Because cyber it's a big field, believe it or not, and we're gonna talk about that in the next few minutes. The entry level job, or what is considered the entry level job, is a SOC, Security Operations Center analyst or information security analyst. That is what is considered the entry level job in cyber. But I want to be very clear. That is the entry level job in cyber, but it's not an entry level job in IT. Help desk specialist is an entry level job in IT. But here is a help desk specialist. Here is an information security analyst. Okay? They're both entry levels, but they are not at the same level. That is the other reason when I mentioned that it's a little harder to get straight into cyber. All right? So let's talk a little bit about a couple of other ones. Penetration tester. Again, we talked about this last week. This is actually very interesting. And this is the also called white hat hackers or ethical hackers. These are the people that actually you hire for them to hack your network. But the difference is instead of them trying to ransom you, they will come and say, I found this, I was able to access, I was able to get your credentials because this, and this. Or I was able to access and get this data because this, and this. So they are hired to find those vulnerabilities, okay? They sometimes also recommend solutions, but basically their job is to break and hack in your network. That's their job. So super interesting, but then again, there's legal and ethical considerations that go into that particular one. Malware analyst. This is an interesting one again, because these is the people that actually dissect that malware, those viruses, those trojans, whatever they are. Basically, they reverse engineer it. Why? Couple of reasons. First of all, is because they want to figure out how they work. Because if they understand how they work, they now can find a solution to prevent them to work that way. All right? The other thing, it's for a lot of these people, is to figure out who made this malware. Okay, that is called attribution, and that is not an exact science because software, like a lot of other things, have fingerprints. For the most part, you can go like, okay, if this walks like a dog, walks like a dog, must be a dog. But sometimes, very, very crafty hackers can use somebody else's fingerprints to deviate you from them. You know what I mean? So these people is really interesting. One of the things that attracted me to cyber was that while I do not condone in any way, shape, or form cybercrime, I do respect some of their methods, their cunning, and sometimes their tenacity. So it's, for lack of a better word, I love the challenge. You are fighting a worthy enemy, an enemy that is sometimes two steps ahead of you. So, anyways, let's look at the next one, cryptologist. So, cybersecurity is possible for the most part because of encryption. And again, we can talk for hours about encryption and types of encryption and what is encryption. But at the end of the day, encryption is basically just making sure that information that leaves one place is received by the person that is intended to, and only that person can be able to see it. If anybody catches in transit, will look like gibberish, and you will not be able to make sense of it. Okay, because you will need to decrypt it in order to make it plain text. Okay, so at the end of the day, also encryption is nothing more than very advanced math. Uh, these are algorithms, and the people that create these encryption algorithms are very intelligent people. um, so cryptologists are people that are either trying to create new algorithms or break existing algorithms. Okay, so like I said, the NSA is always looking for them. Next one is also quite interesting. Data forensics analyst or examiner. So just like in the physical world, if there's a crime committed, the CSIs, the crime investigators come and, they collect the evidence. They collect, blood, fibers, whatever it was left on the crime scene, right? Now, for crimes that are committed using electronic means, same thing. Nowadays, devices, telephones, computers are used, thumb drives, hard drives, all kinds of stuff are used in crime. So there is these people that have to, just like their counterparts that process physical evidence, they have their specific rules how data evidence, so electronic evidence needs to be handled and needs to be not only handled by process in order to be able to stand in a court of law. Okay, so quite interesting job there. Next one, compliance analyst. And again, a lot of people do not think that this is part of cyber, or it doesn't. Actually, let me rephrase that. When you talk about cyber, this does not come to mind for a lot of people. Compliance. That's what I did when I worked here in the security department here at the college. I was in charge of making sure that we were compliant with something called PCI DSS. PCI DSS stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. And it's a regulation. I'm not going to bore you with it, but basically what it is something that it was imposed by the credit card companies. If anybody in the world that takes credit card transactions have to comply with this in one way or another. If you do not comply, you may not be able to take credit card transactions anymore. So we'll be dead in the water. And that's just one of them. Here at the college, we have to also comply with other regulations like GVLHA, the one about the financial regulation. Is that right? And then also we have FERPA. Okay. So again, now that data, it's the information, in the case of the financial information or the student information for FERPA that is protected, that information is now completely electronic, right? So in order to comply with this, it's IT who needs to take care of that. And it's the security department that needs to make sure that we are compliant and then we're keeping this information safe. Not only because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do for our students and our clients, right? The last two I put in there, like I mentioned last week, because these two positions, they were not even, they did not exist 20 years ago. Again, the reason why cyber has expanded so much is because, like we said last week, it just has exploded. It's because of the number of devices and also because the relatively really good return on investment for the criminals. Okay. Um, so that's why this position, especially the last one, the CISO, the chief information officer was not a position that existed 20 years ago for most companies, but now that's a C-level, director or administrator in a lot of companies. We have one here. I worked for her. She was my manager when I was at the security department here at Montgomery College, and she's now our CISO. And again, this is a C level, just like the CIO, CFO. Now you have the CISO. Sometimes in a lot of companies, they report directly either to the CIO or the CEO. Okay. The other one is a more junior, but still a new position, the Information System Security Officer or ISSO. All right, let's talk money, guys. Next slide, please. So 100K. Again, here, the position that we're looking at, the job title that we're looking at is cybersecurity analyst. And again, that is considered entry level in cyber. As you can see, 43, I don't know who will get 43 or where somebody will get 43 because nobody's doing cyber for that kind of money. But then you can see on the other end, 150. All right. So around here, 100K for a cybersecurity analyst sounds about right. Somebody with more experience will start going towards the right. Okay. Let's look at job growth. Next slide. Now we're talking 32% job growth in the next thing from 2018 to 2028. About 35,500 on this particular position only. I know that one of the things that people keep on saying is that there's like these 3 million, 4 million cybersecurity unfulfilled jobs in the United States. So, yes. So, this particular position, but there's a ton of other jobs. All right. 112,000 active openings for security analysts in the US. Again, if it's that many jobs, how come it's so hard to get in? Again, because the combination of knowledge, experience, and sometimes certification, it's what more than what most people that is trying to get into this job has. And I know for a fact. So anyways, but there's ways to do it. There's people that are getting jobs either way. The other part with this, especially in this area, and I have to say this, jobs in cyber usually are also, since we are so close to the federal government to work either for any of the federal agencies or as a contractor, they will prefer somebody that has already a security clearance. And security clearance is not something that you can go to the post office and say, I want a security clearance. No, it doesn't work that way. Security clearances are started and they are requested by whoever is hiring you. And it's a lengthy process. And it depends on the type of security that you will need. The lowest level of security clearance is something called PT or public trust. That is the lowest level. And then it depends on the department, but then it can go to secret, top secret, compartmentalized, and then top secret with polygraph. So there's a lot of it. So that is the other big sometimes barrier to get into a cyber job, especially around here. Okay, especially if you want to work anything related to the government. All right, let's talk in the next slide. Let's talk about those baseline hard technical skills. And please let me know if Chris Stephens joins. I don't know if he's supposed to. All right. So again, troubleshooting. Again, that's same as with the support or with the networking, troubleshooting. Same thing. Same concepts apply. You still are faced with the problem. You need to analyze it, break it in smaller chunks. What is the possible cause? What is the possible solution or solutions? Okay. Now you see that I no longer put foundational. I put strong network and endpoint security knowledge. Okay. So this is no longer entry-level knowledge. A strong network and endpoint security knowledge. How do you acquire a strong network and endpoint security knowledge? Either through a degree in cybersecurity or through a certification in cybersecurity, which we will be discussing in a few moments. Okay. Windows and Linux operating systems. Again, Linux appears again here but for a different reason. A lot of the tools used in cybersecurity for diagnostics, and this is the beauty about tools in cybersecurity. These are the same tools that are used by hackers and defenders. There's no, the same tools are used by both. Okay. So let me give you a good example. And Linux actually plays a good part. There's a Linux distribution called Kali Linux. It's completely free. It's a distribution that is specific for cybersecurity. It has over 100 tools that range from like password cracking for Wi-Fi, network fingerprinting, network reconnaissance. There's tools for everything, but most of these tools actually run on a console. So again, careful if you want to start playing with Kali. Be very careful. All right. So I will not recommend that you start playing with Kali unless you kind of know what you're doing. But that's why Linux is important here. Security software and tools. Again, specific tools or software that is used for monitoring and for vulnerability scanning. There's a ton of them out there. There's Snort, there's Nessus, and there's so knowledge specific about that. Vendor specific software. Again, let's say that your firewalls are Palo Alto, so you may want to know about Palo Alto, or like the company is dependent on that particular. And I'm just mentioning one security vendor, but there's tons of them. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. And again, the next slide, please. And it's going to be a repeat of the other two. Same skills. More so on this one. Again, for the things that I have mentioned, the analysis, the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, the learning and research. Because guess what? You may be faced with an attack that maybe nobody knows. Let me tell you what. Okay. So does anybody knows here what a 0 day is? Or have you heard the term 0 day? What is called 0 day? Exactly. Very good. It's called a 0 day because it has not been exploited. So it's day zero of the exploit. So a 1 day is 1 day after, at 10 days, whatever. But a 0 day is basically a vulnerability, an exploit. An exploit. What is an exploit versus a vulnerability? A vulnerability is like a weak point, right? An exploit is a way to attack that vulnerability. So a 0 day is an exploit that has not been used yet. Therefore, if you are like, what is this? Nobody knows what is this, okay? Because it's 0 day. This is the first time that it's been attacked. Again, it could be that you are the unlucky person that gets attacked with that 0 day, but it most likely is going to be a bunch of people, but nobody has the answer yet of how to control it, diminish it, mitigate it. So that's exactly what is called a 0 day. So yeah, excellent. So and that learning and research comes in play there. It's like, okay, who knows about this? Nobody knows. Okay, what do we know? So that is the other interesting thing about this. That in cyber is all great when everything is working, but the moment that you get attacked is it it's adrenaline rush. So, but again, it's for certain people. All right, let's go to the next slide. So again, and I think that a lot of people, I'm betting that a lot of people that came here today to this session is because you're interested in cyber, right? Cyber being a hot topic right now still, and there's still a tons of jobs in cyber. So what was covered in this section? What stood out for you? And if you're interested in a career in cyber, we are going to, if you have any questions now, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we have time at the end. But if anybody has any questions right now, I'll be happy. Questions? Nobody? No. Okay. All right, let's move on and then we can come back to questions. Okay. So let's talk about education, again, and preparation. Some of this stuff for the people who joined us last week, again, is going to be repetitive, but we're going to talk about degrees versus certifications, and then we're going to go in specific certifications for these three areas. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to go a little fast here again because, okay, so IT is basically, again, if you look at those job posts, what they're looking for is knowledge, so or skills, and that experience, which is the application of those skills. That's what it is. Because, and this is why people is having issues or problems sometimes getting into the field, because they have the knowledge, but they don't have a proof of they have applied that knowledge, whatever that knowledge is. You can say, okay, I now have this certification or I have the A plus, but I have never touched a computer. So they want you to say, okay, you know, but how have you applied that knowledge? So again, if you have both, that's where you can get in. So most people, at least, more than 25% of people in IT do not have college degrees. It's likely that they have acquired the knowledge or the skill some other way, and they most likely have at least one certification. All right. Now, a degree is not necessary to get into the field per se, at least in the entry level positions. Some positions do require a degree, but it's important. Degrees will be important to advance to a higher position and definitely into management. Okay. Again, so what is the main difference between a degree and a certification? A degree doesn't matter if it's a 2 year, 4 year, or specialized or postgrad. They try to give you grounded rather knowledge. So you have your core classes in whatever it is that your degree is. Let's say that your degree is in information systems. So all your core classes are going to be something IT related, but you're also going to have to take classes in English and math and social sciences and electives. Why is that? Again, like I said last week, is because what a degree does for you, it does not prepare you for a job. It prepares you to be a professional that is proficient. And again, that you can compose those emails, that you have the enough proficiency in communications and all that other stuff. All right. So that's what it does. It's a more breadth of exposure. Certification, okay, show that you have a specific knowledge. It could be foundational or it could be a little bit deeper, but it's narrower. Okay, so a degree is wider, a certification is narrower, and it can be even narrower still. Now, when we go post-grad, masters, and PhDs, those are narrower. Associates and bachelors are wide in nature. Masters is like this, and a PhD is like this. Okay. So that is the main difference. Let's go to the next slide, please. So let's talk about industry certifications. Next slide, please. Again, so a little recap of what we talked about the last week. Couple of things about IT certification. A lot of job postings either have certification as required or as preferred. Okay. IT requires preparation, training, and passing a test. We're going to go back to the preparation and training. I made a point of explaining that last week, and we'll do it again today. Okay, so you need to pass a test, and then in order to maintain the certification, you need to either A, after 3 years, take that test again, or B, amass continuing education credits called CEUs or CPUs, whatever they call, depending on certification. Um, so in lieu of the test, okay? In addition to fees, you have to pay a yearly fee. So there's a couple of fees for certifications. First of all, the exam fee, all right? And that exam fee can vary a lot depending on the certification. It could be as low as $150, I think, and it can be way over $1,000 for some of those GX certifications, okay? So that's just the fee for the exam. What happens if you don't pass the exam? Do you get a second chance for free? No, you get a discounted rate for the second try, but you don't get a free second chance. No. And usually you have to also wait 3 or 4 weeks before you can attempt the second time. Okay. Then there is the yearly fee. Okay. So every year you have to pay a fee to maintain the certification. And again, it could be something like $75 or it could be something like $200. I think that I pay 160 or 175, I guess, for to maintain my CISSP. Now, that is to for administrative stuff, but also because the organization usually provides you a way so you can get your CEUs that way as well. So there's some value on it. Gonna go back to the preparation and training. So IT certifications can be either vendor neutral or vendor specific, okay? And let me explain what that means. So, and again, we'll go back to that one, but IT certifications can cover general areas within IT or can qualify worker professional specific skills, okay? So let's go back to vendor specific and vendor neutral. Vendor specific are certifications that is not for a particular tool, a specific vendor. So let's say something like Network Plus. Network Plus is a certification that shows that whoever passed that exam has enough knowledge about computer networks in general, okay? The same thing about A plus or Security Plus, they're vendor neutral. So they concentrate more about the knowledge than in any specific tools. Vendor specific will be something like provided by Microsoft, by Amazon, or let's talk about networking, and we're going to talk specifically about this one. So while Network Plus is a vendor neutral certification, CCNA, which is also a networking certification, stands for Cisco Certified Network Associate, is vendor specific because what it says, while Network Plus says you have enough knowledge about computer networks in general, CCNA says now you know how to configure, deploy, patch devices, Cisco devices, okay, specifically. So in sometimes it makes sense to stack certifications, okay? Sometimes it doesn't make sense. For example, in the last example that I gave you, it does make sense. A Network Plus as a CCNA. Couple of things about certifications before we move forward. You need to be careful with certifications because as you can see, it costs money and effort to get them. Some people try to get 5, 6 certifications. That actually doesn't look good, in my opinion. It's better to have 2 or 3 that are kind of focused in one area. If you have a certification for, a Python certification, and then you also have Security Plus, and then you have A Plus, and maybe you have an AWS certification, it's like, what are you trying to do? You're all over the place. You want to be a programmer, you want to be in cloud, you want to be in cyber. What are you trying to do? So try to keep something that kind of makes sense. And as you can see, they cost money and effort. So the other piece is like you don't have to maintain certifications forever. You only maintain certifications while they make sense to you and what you're trying to present to the employer. Let me give you an example. I had Security Plus, but after I got CISSP, I let the Security Plus expire. Why? Security Plus was a good credential when I was trying to get into cyber, and then CISSP is a much higher credential than Security Plus. So it doesn't make sense to have a lower one and a higher one because the higher one is always going to be higher than the lower one. Why would I pay more money trying to maintain those CEUs, etc.? So, okay, let's go back to, again, we talked about that they can cover general areas like Network Plus or qualify for specific skills. And that could be, for example, a Python certification where it says like, okay, now you know how to program in Python. All right, so let's talk about that preparation because I think that is important. And I always like to spend a couple of minutes talking about that because that's one of the questions that I get asked the most. So how do you prepare for the certification? And I told you last week, and I'm going to repeat this. In my opinion, there's 4 paths. Okay, number 1, you just think you know what you're doing, go and take the exam. Don't recommend it for most people because, yeah, no, you need to at least get. Number 2 is that you try to prepare yourself. How can you prepare yourself? Oh, there's videos in YouTube. You can buy the book in Amazon. You can take the preparation test, whatever. Okay, that's good. That's actually doable. For most people, they're going to be the other paths, and they're going to be either A, there's going to be, and the one that I recommend the most, not because I work for a community college, but that you take a preparation class in a community college. Why? If you're trying to gain the knowledge, this is the best way. Why? and it's going to be economically probably the one that makes the most sense to you, aside from the other two that we discussed before, which are basically free or very lower cost. A class in a community college is going to cost you in the hundreds of dollars, and is going to probably be spread out over like 12 weeks, something like that. So it will give you time for you to really digest and get the knowledge, especially if you are trying to get the knowledge. Okay. Now, if you are somebody that already has the knowledge but is just trying to pass the certification, then you go to the third option, which we're going to talk in a second. The second option will be that you take one of these preparation courses in one of these technical institutes. Nothing against them. If this works for you, perfect. But this is the situation versus like taking a class in a community college. They are going to cost you not in the hundreds, but possibly in the thousands of dollars. We're talking $2,000, $3,000, and they are usually more compressed. What I dislike about these centers is they usually try to sell you what I call the glossy brochure. Basically, they tell you something to the effect of, "Oh, come and do this, and in 6 months you're going to be making six figures." Possible, but highly unlikely. Okay, they don't usually, they only sell you the nice aspect, which is possible again, and they are a business. So again, I don't not recommend them. Okay, I just say if that is what is going to work for you, and it could be because it's very convenient for you, or maybe your company is paying for it. By all means, do it. The third option is what I've done, which is because I have experience in the industry. What I need is preparation for the particular test. So that is a boot camp. That is what I call the nuclear option. Why? Because it's either 4 or 5 days and it's super intensive. It's 40 hours and they cram all those 1,500 pages of knowledge. Boom, 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 boom. And then they're very expensive. They're usually in the neighborhood of $4,000 or $5,000. The only good thing about those is a lot of them sometimes include a voucher for the test. I have done those. Why? Because they've been free. The college paid for those for me. So why not? And then again, because particularly for me, I didn't need to really get the knowledge. I had the knowledge. I just needed to have a refresher and to know exactly what the exam was going to be about. Okay? Make sense? So that's about preparation. All right. So let's go to the next one, please. Oh, Chris is here. Great. All right. So, and we're getting to the end, okay? And then we're gonna have as part of our resources our friend Chris Stephens. All right. So what is CompTIA? And again, I'm gonna preface this by saying that we do not have any particular association with CompTIA. All right. Um, and I have had CompTIA certification. I had the Security Plus, and we're gonna talk about that one in a sec. Um, so they are the Computer Technology Industry Association. It's a nonprofit trade association. Why are we bringing them to the play? Because their certifications are considered industry standard. They are not affiliated with any vendor, so they are vendor neutral, and they are really accepted, or they are considered. The three certifications that we're going to talk about in the next slide are considered entry-level certifications for support, network, and cyber. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what the recommendation is A plus, network plus, security plus, and that you doing them in this order. Now, do you have to do that? No. For example, for me, I never had A plus or network plus. I jumped straight into security plus. Okay. So what does each one of these cover? A plus is considered entry level certification for support careers. Network Plus is considered the entry level um, certification for networking, and Security Plus for cybersecurity. Okay. So again, you can skip them. You can do it in the order that you want. The reason or the logic is A plus covers hardware and operating systems. Network Plus covers computer networks, and Security Plus covers how to secure networks, hardware, and software. So it makes sense that you need to have that knowledge in A Plus and Network Plus before you take Security Plus. I jumped straight to Security Plus because I already had that knowledge. All right. So then they have other certifications, more advanced, etc. Next slide, please. We're going to talk now specifically. So this is IT support certifications. This is again CompTIA A plus. This is the entry level certification if you want to start in IT. So you want to become a help desk specialist. Usually get your A plus and somehow try to get some experience either by volunteering or some kind of internship. Boom, you can start looking for a job. Okay, so that's that one. Let's go to the next slide. So for networking, we already talked about the network plus, and as you can see, it mentions the three one. And then we also talk about the CCNA, which is the one that I mentioned, the Cisco Certified Network Associate. This is one of the few cases that I recommend stacking or having two credentials, okay? And why CCNA? Again, this before you do that, before you even say, okay, I'm gonna get those two right now. No, the company that you need to the reason that CCNA is so popular is because like 80% of companies run on Cisco, all right, Cisco network. So chances are that a company that you're applying for will like a CCNA. But in the off chance that they don't like CCNA, it may be a different one, right? So this is why you always have to understand why you're trying to get and why you're trying to get these certifications, okay? Let's go to the next one. And this is, okay, certification in cyber. And here we have separated the entry level, which is the Security Plus, pretty much. There's another one called the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker, that is issued by the EC Council. So, okay, now in the advanced, as you can see, there's the Pen Test Plus, which is for the pen testers. Also, the EC Council has a pen tester certification as well that is not here. And then you have the CISSP, okay? The CISSP stands for Certified Information System Security Professional, is issued by ISC Square, the International Information System Security Certification Consortium, and is often referred as the gold standard in cyber. Why is that? One thing that I forgot to mention about certifications is that most certifications do not require any prerequisites. Like I mentioned, you can jump straight into Security Plus if you want to. You don't have to have A plus and then Network plus, and then that is what they recommend. But you can jump straight into any of those. You don't need to have anybody. These, the CISSP on the other end, in order for you to get that, you have to pass the exam, which is a grueling exam. I'm not going to get into that. But aside from that, you need to prove that you have had 5 years of full-time experience in at least 3 of the 9 domains according to ISC Square. On top of that, somebody with a CISSP needs to sponsor you. So it's really hard to get that certification. Now you see why I'm maintaining it. it I got in the same year I got my master's degree and my CISSP. Let me put it this way. I didn't even want to go to my graduation. I was like, okay, it's done for my master's. My family made me go, and I'm glad that they did. But when I got my CSSP, I literally started jumping and screaming of joy. It was so hard to get that one. I mean, it wasn't easy to get my master's. I'm not gonna say that it was easy, but I just felt that it was more stressful to get the CISSP. All right, next slide. DoD 8570. All right, why am I even mentioning this? So what is this? So DoD 8570 stands for Department of Defense 8570. All right, so it's Directive 8570. So let me resume this slide for you. Uh, Back in 2005, this was the Obama administration. This is when cybersecurity started like going like really into the mainstream. This is when the government was like, okay, so this cybersecurity kind of thing is real, and every agency had their own thing of doing cyber, and they were like, no, 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 wait, wait, wait. We need to figure out a standard way so all agencies and everybody that works for the government needs to be on the same standard as far as cyber. So they came up with 8570. And why am I even bringing this up? Because in 8570, the manual contains the certifications that the government accepted for the different positions related to cyber, for anything that related, for actually for touching computers in the government, okay? The reason being is like, if it's good enough for the government, it's usually good enough for industry. Why am I saying this? if you're trying to get a certification, there are literally hundreds of certifications in IT. And you may be confused, which one do I need to get? Which one? So let's go to the next slide. I'm bringing this up, and this is a small graphic. This is you can Google it, and they're actually bigger ones. The idea here, and as you can see, this is classified by the different levels that the government does. It's the 8570, and what certification is accepted in these levels. That to you doesn't mean anything right now because you're not applying for these jobs. The idea here is like if the certification that you're thinking about getting is listed here, is most likely definitely that the industry is going to accept it as well. Okay, that is the reason that I included this slide. This is a specific, especially for cybersecurity certifications, because there are a ton of them, believe it or not. There are not as many as for the other ones as there are for cyber. All right. So, anyways, let's go to the next slide because I want to cover a couple more points. Um, all right. So again, out of what was covered in this section, what stood out for you, and what certification or certifications are you most interested in, and why? All right. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about resources, and this is where I have a good friend of ours that will be joining us in a minute. So these are some resources, okay, that for you, that if you're interested in any of these certifications or acquiring any of this knowledge and skill may work for you. So again, I mentioned that here at taking classes at a community college, here at Montgomery College, you don't have to take it here, but all community colleges have two areas usually. They have the credit classes and the non-credit classes, also AKA workforce development. This program is under the umbrella of workforce development. So our sister organization is the Information Technology Institute. Next slide, please. And these are some of the courses, non-credit courses that ITI offers. Okay, again, these are paid and usually in the hundreds of dollars. They don't offer all of them at the same time, but as you can see, there are courses from anywhere from acquiring foundational knowledge, okay, to preparation for specific certifications. And we have different areas, okay? Again, everybody's gonna receive a copy of this presentation. There's a QR code if you wanna find out more about that, but this is a good way for you to acquire that skill set. Next slide, please. Another great resource for you guys is here, is the Ignite Hub. So if you're here tonight, is because you are familiar with the hub. You have seen our page. Um, so next slide, please, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the services that they can be useful for you if you're interested in a career in IT. We have a couple of guest speaker series. Our first one is Fireside Career Chat Guest Speaker Series. And on that one, by the way, most of these events are offer hybrid, so in person, and if not, you can also join us online. Um, so on this particular one, the fireside chat, our guest speakers come and talk to us about their career journey. Some of them are in IT, some of them are not, but they kind of come and tell us like, listen, this is how I did it, this is how we'd have done it, and then give us some advice. Some of these people also have their own businesses, etc. So it's a good resource to check. The future of tech is about that is doing the midday, again, is hybrid. And that one is about the showcasing a specific up and coming technology, but more importantly, is not just what the technology does, because you can find that anywhere in a YouTube video if you want to. This is more of like why this technology is important to you and why you need to know about it or how this technology is being applied. We have been doing a lot of AI lately, but it's like how AI is being used in the medical field or for finance or for education, etc., that kind of stuff, okay? Then we have coding bootcamps, again, for people that is interested in having a little or interested in becoming developers. Next week, we're going to be talking about careers in web and app development. So this is a good way for them to test it to see if it's something that they will like. They are also free. Then we have the IT career pathway workshops. You're attending one of them right now. And then this is where it becomes interesting. The career workshops, career coaching, and that is going to be explained in the next slide by my good friend, Chris Stephens. So this is a partnership that we have with Career Catchers, and Chris is from Career Catchers, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about this career coaching, the free career coaching, and the career workshops. Thank you for being here tonight, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Eduardo mentioned, my name is Chris Stevens. I'm a career coach. I work for a nonprofit organization called Career Catchers here in Montgomery County, and we are partnered with the Ignite Hub to present a career skills workshop series.
Hmm.
I would definitely recommend that you attend that if you can. But in addition
Okay.
to the workshops, we also provide one-on-one career coaching for any residents of Montgomery County who are interested in pursuing a career in the IT field. So, the one-on-one career coaching covers things like sort of career planning and goal setting, help with resumes, with job applications, with preparing for interviews. Eduardo discussed a lot of great sort of training and certification options tonight. So, you know, part of my role would be to help you, look for, different options to get those training and certifications that you need. Um, so if you're interested, I'm going to go ahead and put my email in the chat here. Um,
Hmm.
and feel free to shoot me an email and we can set up a time to meet either virtually or in person. Um, Whatever works best for you. So, um, yeah, uh, you know, I'm this is a great resource to take advantage of.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. And Chris is a great coach. Will provide you his email. We'll provide you with his email. Yes, definitely take advantage of these guys. This is actually free. So we appreciate our partnership with Career Catchers and with Chris. And again, check out both these career workshops because the career workshops he does and again, those are hybrid. So right now we're doing them in person at the East County Education Center, down county, but also you can join virtually. And we have a lot of good topics. We have resume writing, transferable skills, the job of finding a job. Because if you're trying to look for a job, it's a job to find a job. And, career. So they're really good topics. And then again, with the career coaching one on one, I think it is super important because one of the main things that I've seen with people is that you need to figure out what you need to conduct that skills inventory. All right. And then you have to be really honest. And this is where a career coach can help you because this is where I want to be. And these are the skills that are needed. And these are the skills that I have. So I'm missing skill X, Y, Z. How do I get those skills? That's where the career coach can help you. And, just to try to get to that point and then try to get you to that entry level job. Okay. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for everything that you do for us. So appreciate that. All right. And we're going to start wrapping up here, guys. So next slide, please. So, uh, so just before we wrap up, um, again, if somebody wants to share by all means. Otherwise, but this one, I am really going to ask you to take action, okay? Because out of what was covered in this presentation, what stood out for you the most? So again, that's personal reflection. But the next one, I'm going to really, really encourage you to do something, okay? So what action or actions will you take after attending this presentation? It doesn't have to be big. The action that you decide to take may be, I'm going to investigate a little bit more about this Network Plus certification, or I'm going to sign for career coaching with Chris, or I'm going to attend the next week's presentation to see what are the other three paths may be. Okay, that is your step. Your step can also be, you know what? I'm now really convinced. I'm going to start trying to find a way to get into cyber or whatever it is. Okay, so that is the important. If you're going to take something out of tonight, that's what I would like you to do. In the next slide, please. So thank you. That is my information. Again, everybody's going to get a copy of this certificate, this presentation. And in the next slide, I'm going to ask you please to complete that survey. All right. I think my colleague is also going to put the link for the people online. So if you click it, it will take you straight into it. And if you'll be so kind, if you scan it with your phone, you can. Uh, it takes only a couple of minutes for you guys to do it, and we really appreciate it because it gives me feedback on how did I do, and also the programming that we're presenting here at the hub. How is this? Is it was valuable to you? What would you like to see, etc. So we really look into this. My director, before we plan every season here at the Ignite Hub, we really, really look at these results. They're very important to us and to plan our programming. So while you complete that, I would like to open the floor if anybody has any questions. I will love to answer those. And yeah, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes and then I'm going to thank you for being here tonight, for, decided to come and spend your valuable time here. I hope that it was actually something that it was of value to you, and then that you learned something, or that it led you to something. The idea here is that we're trying to provide the information so you can make an educated decision as far as like where you go from here. And to be honest with you, if you decide that none of this is what you thought it was going to be, actually, I will count that as a win, because now, guess what? You're not going to waste your time or your money or your effort into pursuing something that you may later find out that that's not what you wanted. So, as with everything, I think that I try to be as honest as possible. Again, I don't try to discourage anybody. Quite the opposite. The reason that I'm here, the reason that I stopped being a technician, is because I love sharing my experience and with people that is trying to get into the field, and because the field needs more. Honestly, we need more women and we need more minorities in the field. We need to get more people in the IT field. It's a very good field to be. At least it has been for me. And it may or may not be for you, but if you decide that this is something that you would like to pursue, by all means, I think that it's worth it. So again, questions? No questions? Again, well, if there's no questions, I would like to thank you again, once again, and wish you a good night. And I hope to see you next Thursday, same place, same time. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. All right. Stop recording. Thank you. So let's give